At my age, I figured nothing could surprise me anymore. But that morning, as the sun was just barely peeking through the kitchen window, my life took such an unexpected turn that even now, recalling it, sends a shiver down my spine. For almost 20 years, my wife, Ilara, had served me breakfast exclusively in the same white mug. A simple mug. No patterns, no cracks, nothing that stood out. She had always said the same thing. "It's better this way, Marcus. This mug holds the heat best." I never argued. I never suspected a thing. Until that morning, I decided to switch out the mugs without her noticing. It wasn't about distrust. It was curiosity, a weariness, a feeling that had been growing inside me for weeks, like a silent alarm that only older men, after a lifetime of observing gestures, are capable of perceiving. When she went out to the backyard to clip some herbs for her tea, I seized the opportunity and poured my coffee into another identical mug, one we hadn't used in years. When I finished breakfast and lifted the mug to carry it to the sink, I saw something in the bottom, something that froze me solid, a dark, thick residue clinging to the center like a deliberate mark. My heart stopped for a second. I had never seen anything like it. Never. My breathing turned heavy, ragged. And the worst part was I had no idea what that discovery meant. But I knew it wasn't an accident. But before I continue, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It lets me know you're supporting me and enjoying my stories. Now let's keep going. I stared at that substance at the bottom of the mug. It wasn't coffee. It wasn't tea. It wasn't hot chocolate. It was something different. Something that looked almost chemical. A strange odor. A faint sting in my nose. Then I remembered that never in all those years had I washed my own mug. Ilara always washed it herself. She never let me put it in the dishwasher. Sometimes she even put it away before I finished clearing the table. I swallowed hard. The house was silent. The sound of scissors clipping herbs still drifted in from the yard. I felt an impulse to leave everything as it was, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But at 68 years old, having buried my parents, 2 brothers, and several friends, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And that stain wasn't a coincidence. I decided to check the original mug, the one Ilara had used every single day. I took it down from the high cabinet, where I'd absent-mindedly placed it. I held it up to the light, and my hands started to tremble. At the bottom was a worn circle, a mark, as if something had been accumulating or dissolving over time, as if every morning I had consumed something without knowing it. I didn't know if I was overreacting. I didn't know if my imagination was playing tricks on me. But something inside told me I shouldn't ignore it. Something instinctive, something visceral, something that had been sleeping for years. Ilara walked into the kitchen at that very moment. I was still holding the mug. She paused when she saw me, and a shadow, a barely perceptible one, crossed her face. I've seen her smile in many ways throughout our life, but this expression, this one, I didn't recognize. "What are you doing with that mug, Marcus?" she asked in a voice that was too soft. "Just switching them out," I replied. "Figured it'd be good to use a different one." Ilara frowned slightly. "I told you that one's better," she repeated, moving closer. "Give it back, please." There was something in her tone I had never heard. It wasn't anger. It wasn't worry. It was urgency and fear. Yes, fear. My heart raced. So I responded calmly, feigning innocence. Ilara, I just want to know why this mug is so special. She reached out to take it, but I didn't hand it over. Marcus, she said more seriously, give me the mug. I saw a glint in her eyes, not of affection, not of habit, but a quick, almost imperceptible reflection that told me this conversation should never have happened. Ilara, I said slowly, what always settles at the bottom? She blinked once, then twice, as if her brain was searching for a believable lie. Nothing, just breakfast residue. It doesn't smell like coffee or tea, I responded without raising my voice. She tensed. Her breathing changed. For a second, I thought I saw her tremble. Then she took a step back. Marcus, you're being ridiculous, she said. Just give me the mug, and let's clean it. That's all. But I didn't move. Something inside me had finally woken up completely. Something that had been dormant through years of quiet, routine marriage. Sometimes love turns into habit, and habit turns into blindness. Why can't I use another mug? I insisted. She pressed her lips together, and then she said it. Because that's the one you have to use. My heart stopped, just like that. The one you have to use. Not the one she preferred. Not the one that held the heat. Not the one I liked best. The one I had to. That nuance changed everything. Ilara, I murmured. What have you been putting in my breakfast? Her eyes widened. She backed up another step. Marcus, please don't ruin this. Ruin what? Our marriage or something else? I took a step closer, not to intimidate her, but to see her better. To see if there was anything left of the woman I married 4 decades ago. Ilara, tell me the truth, I whispered. She started breathing irregularly. She pressed a hand to her chest. You wouldn't understand, she said. I did it for us. And then I understood. Whatever it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a common stain. It was something she had put there with intention, with purpose, something I was consuming every morning, something that had been carefully hidden under the pretense of a loving routine. My voice broke when I said, Ilara, what were you doing to me? She closed her eyes and responded with something that still chills me today. Protecting you, Marcus. Protecting us both. But her definition of protection, I would soon discover, was nothing like mine. Ilara didn't speak again after saying that sentence. She stood still, her hands shaking slightly, as if she'd revealed more than she intended. I watched her in silence, trying to recognize her. The woman standing in front of me was the same one I'd shared dinners, trips, losses, laughter, sleepless nights, and days of struggle with. But something in her gaze, something had changed. Or maybe it had always been there, hidden behind a routine so meticulous I never took the time to look beyond it. I walked slowly to the table and set the mug down between us. The light coming through the window illuminated the bottom, highlighting the dark substance stuck there even more. I felt a tingling sensation run down my arms. Ilara looked down, avoiding eye contact with me. Part of me wanted to hug her, to demand she tell me the truth plainly, to go back to being the man who trusted her blindly. But another part, an older, wiser, more weary part, knew the time had come to face whatever was happening in our home. Ilara, I said, my voice firm, why do you say you were protecting me? She swallowed. Her eyes filled with a sadness that almost melted me, but not quite. I couldn't let my emotions govern my decisions anymore, not after seeing what I had seen. It's complicated, she whispered. You won't understand if I tell you all at once. Then tell me slowly, I replied. From the beginning. Ilara backed up to the countertop and leaned against it. She took a deep breath, but her voice came out broken. I was afraid of losing you. Losing me? I repeated, confused. Ilara, I wasn't going anywhere. She let out a nervous, almost choked laugh. Oh, Marcus, you don't know what happens when you don't look. You don't know what's hiding in your medical records, the ones you never want to review. You don't know anything about what I've had to prevent. My hands turned ice cold. My medical records. Ilara, what did you do? She shook her head several times. Quick movements, as if trying to shake off an unpleasant thought. You wouldn't understand. I just wanted to take care of you. Keep you well. Keep you here. Those words pierced my chest like a thorn. Keep me here. What do you mean by here, Ilara? She didn't answer. That silence was worse than any confession. I walked to the cabinet where we kept the mugs. They were all lined up, shiny as new. All but mine, the one she insisted on using. I took it in my hands and examined it closely. It was identical to the others, but lighter, more worn, more handled. Marcus, please, Ilara said, moving closer. Don't make this harder. It'll be hard for you if you don't tell me the truth. She stopped. For the first time in many years, I saw fear in her. Not the fear one feels about an accident, a strange noise, or a stormy night. It was the fear of someone who has built a lie so massive she no longer knows how to support it. Ilara, I repeated gently, tell me what was in that mug. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. And then, before I could press her further, the landline phone rang in the living room. That old, almost forgotten sound boomed through the house like an alarm. Ilara flinched. I stared at her fixedly. Don't answer it, I told her. But she darted toward the living room before I could stop her. I followed immediately, walking as fast as my 68-year-old knees would allow. When I arrived, she already had the phone in her hand. Yes, she said, her voice trembling. She paused. Her face paled. I told you not to call me at this hour, she whispered, almost inaudibly. My heart stopped again for an instant. Ilara, I said from the doorway. Who is it? She looked at me, not with surprise, not with guilt, but with desperation. A desperation that confirmed something devastating. The person on the other end of the line wasn't a stranger. It was someone important. Hang up, Ilara, I ordered, taking a step forward. She shook her head. I can't. And before I could react, she turned toward the wall, as if to hide the conversation. I can't talk right now, she whispered. Yes, he's already starting to suspect. Yes, I know, but it's not that easy. No, I can't do it today. I told you, I need more time. Those words hit me like a hammer blow to the chest. Ilara, I yelled, snatching the phone from her. Who are you talking to? But the line was already dead. Ilara covered her face with her hands. Her body shook. Marcus, please don't jump to conclusions. Conclusions, I responded, feeling anger mingle with fear. Draw themselves when your wife receives secret calls saying she can't do it today. She began to cry. Not soft tears, not guilty tears, but deep, silent sobs, like someone who knows she has finally been discovered. Ilara, I said, more slowly, what is it you can't do? She looked up, and finally, through sobs, she said, I can't let you leave my life. But that wasn't the whole truth. I knew it. She knew it. And even if she wouldn't admit it yet, there was someone else involved. Someone who shouldn't have been in our story, yet was more present than I could have imagined. Alara continued to cry in front of me, her trembling hands covering her face, as if she wanted to hide from the world and herself. I watched her, paralyzed, trying to connect pieces that didn't quite fit. For 40 years, this woman had been my partner, my rock in hard times, my refuge when life got heavy. How was it possible that I was now looking at her like a stranger? "Alara," I said softly, almost whispering, "tell me who was on the phone." She shook her head over and over, like a child asked for a truth she was afraid to speak. "I can't, Marcus," she sobbed. "I can't." "Why?" I asked. "What is binding you like this?" She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm down, but her chest was rising and falling irregularly. She walked to the window and looked outside, as if expecting to see someone watching from the street. That gesture made my skin crawl. "You don't understand," she said, without turning around. "This isn't simple. I'm protecting you. I'm protecting us." "From who?" I insisted. "From what?" Alara pressed her hands against the glass. "From a truth you're not ready to know." My heart hammered. Sometimes the body understands before the mind does, and my mind knew that what I was about to hear could change my life forever. "Then tell me," I said firmly. "Make me understand." She finally turned to face me. Her eyes were swollen, but there was a determination in them I hadn't seen before, as if the moment she'd spent years avoiding had finally arrived. "Marcus," she began, "do you remember that doctor you went to 2 years ago, the one who ran tests because you were so tired?" I nodded slowly. "Of course, I remember." "Do you remember that you never wanted to go back for the results?" My brow furrowed instinctively. "Alara, I didn't go back because you told me it wasn't necessary. You said everything was fine, that it was just stress." She closed her eyes in pain. "I didn't tell you the whole truth." I felt a lash of the pain in my chest. "Alara, don't play games with me. What did those tests show?" She took a breath, opened her mouth, but couldn't pronounce anything. It was I who delivered the next blow without meaning to, because I remembered something. "Alara," I said in a choked voice, "this has something to do with what was in the mug." She pressed her lips together. Her silence was a clear answer. "Alara, what have you been giving me?" I asked, feeling a cold sweat run down my back. "What was in my breakfast?" She finally spoke, but without looking me in the eye. "It was something to help you stay stable." "Stable?" My voice cracked. "Stable from what?" Alara backed up a step. "Marcus, you had a serious heart problem. Very serious. And if I told you, you would refuse treatment. I know you. You're stubborn. You never go to the doctor. You don't trust medication. So, yes. Yes. I added something to your breakfast. Something that kept you well." That explanation sounded too convenient, too smooth, too perfect to be true. I listened to her, but my instincts screamed something different. She isn't telling you everything. "Why did you never tell me?" I asked. She angrily wiped away tears. "Because if I told you that you were sick, you'd sink, and I couldn't allow that." I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. "Alara, what medicine was it?" She fell silent. Not answering was the most devastating confirmation. "Alara, what was it?" I repeated firmly. She clenched her fists. "A regulator," she whispered. "Nothing else." "What's it called?" I asked. She opened her mouth, and at that exact moment, the sound of the floorboards creaked behind us. We both spun around. It was my son, Elijah. I hadn't heard him come in. "What medicine was it, Mom?" he asked, a mix of anger and fear in his voice. Because I saw the bottom of that mug, and that wasn't a regulator. Alara paled, literally. Her face lost color in seconds. You don't understand, she said. Then make us understand, my son replied. Because what I saw in there looked like something else. I swallowed. What do you think it was, son? He looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, something you didn't want Dad to find out about. Something that wasn't on any prescription. Something she didn't get legally. Alara shook her head repeatedly, trembling. It's not what you think. My son took a step forward. Oh, really? Then tell me why you got a call just when Dad discovered the mug. Why did you tell someone you couldn't do it today? What is it you couldn't do? The silence that fell was so heavy, it seemed to fill the entire house. Alara opened her mouth, but this time she didn't get a chance to answer because suddenly we heard a dull thud outside, as if someone had slammed a car door violently. My son ran to the window, looking toward the car, parked across the street. Dad, he said in a low voice, there's someone out there. I moved closer, as best I could. Through the reflections on the glass, I made out a figure inside the car. I couldn't see his face, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A man staring fixedly at us. And when Alara saw him, she dropped a mug she had unknowingly picked up. It shattered into pieces on the floor. She murmured, No, he wasn't supposed to come. Not yet. My son looked at her, horrified. Who is that man, Mom? Alara started crying again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was panic. Alara, I said, feeling short of breath. Who is it? She looked up, defeated, and murmured, He's the person who wants you gone from my life. I felt as if the floor were sinking beneath my feet. My son and I looked at each other in disbelief. Gone? I repeated. What are you saying, Alara? She closed her eyes. That man is who I called. He knows about your heart. He knows what was in the mug. My son took a step back. And who is he? He yelled. Alara opened her eyes, red from crying, and said the name I never imagined hearing. He's your brother, Marcus. It's Reuben. I felt the world go dark for an instant. My brother, my own brother, Reuben. That name dropped into the living room like a sharp knife that not only cut the air, but also something inside me. I don't know how long I stood there without moving, without breathing, without understanding. Alara's words still hung suspended, as if they wanted to return to her mouth, as if they wished they had never been spoken. My son was the first to react. Reuben? He repeated, incredulous. Dad's brother? The one who left years ago? Alara nodded without looking up. I felt a trembling in my hands. It wasn't from age. It was from betrayal, from disbelief, from a pain so old I thought it would never bleed again. Alara, I murmured, what does Reuben have to do with our life? She took a deep breath, wiping her soaked face. But her voice broke again. You never wanted to know, Marcus. You always shut that door. You always denied your brother could hurt you. You always said he wasn't capable of something like this. My son looked at me, confused. What happened between you two, Dad? I sighed. A sigh heavy with years, with difficult memories, with poorly healed wounds. Reuben and I began, feeling a knot in my throat. We weren't always distant. As kids, we were inseparable. But when we grew up, he took some dark paths, money problems, dangerous friends, gambling. Things I didn't fully understand until it was too late. Alara clenched her fists. Reuben never got over you doing well, she interjected. He always envied everything about you. Your job, your marriage, your stability. He never forgave you for being the good one in the family. My son frowned. And what does that have to do with what you were doing? He asked. What does that have to do with the mug? Alara swallowed. It has everything to do with it. The living room filled with an unbearable silence. Alara, I insisted, my voice low and serious. I want the truth. Half a story won't cut it anymore. I want to know what Reuben has to do with this. With you? With me? She finally forced herself to speak. When you were sick 2 years ago, she said slowly, Reuben found out. How? I asked. I don't know. Maybe an acquaintance at the hospital? Maybe he looked up your records. Reuben always finds what he wants, she replied bitterly. The truth is, one day he showed up at my door when you were sleeping. He said he knew you were weak and needed help. My son gritted his teeth. Help? What kind of help? Alara lowered her gaze. He said he had a solution to keep Marcus from deteriorating, but that it was necessary to keep him stable. He told me about a supplement that would prevent a serious episode. Something natural, according to him. Something I had to dissolve in your drink every morning. I felt a stab in my chest. Alara, for God's sake, you trusted Reuben for something like that? I was desperate, Marcus. She started crying again. I saw you tired, weak, pale. You refused to go back to the doctor. Reuben spoke with such confidence. He said you would never agree to treatment, that this was the only way to help you. I believed him. I clung to his word. I clung to the hope of not losing you. My son shook his head. Mom, what were you thinking? She looked at him with swollen eyes. Of you, of your father, of our life. I didn't think it could be anything bad. I didn't think Reuben had a hidden motive, she confessed, but I knew it instantly. Reuben never does anything for free. Alara nodded, defeated. I found out too late, Marcus. Much too late. After months, he started calling me. He started controlling the dosage. He started telling me that you couldn't recover too fast, that if I stopped using it suddenly, it could be dangerous, and that we had to continue for your well-being. My son's eyes widened in horror. For whose well-being, really? He spat angrily. Alara closed her eyes, crying silently. Reuben threatened me, she finally said. He told me that if I stopped using it, he would reveal things that would destroy the family. I don't know where he got so much information, but he knew things about you, about your job, even about me. My throat burned. Alara, were you afraid? She nodded slowly. Afraid of him. But also, she paused for a few seconds. I was afraid of losing you, even if it sounds absurd now. My son took a step toward her, but his anger had been replaced by bewilderment. Mom, Dad was being poisoned. The word fell heavily. Alara covered her mouth with both hands. No, it wasn't poison, she said, her voice broken. No, at first it was something to make him dependent, to make him need the mug, so that Reuben could manage the situation. I closed my eyes. Everything was clicking into place. The lack of energy, the intermittent dizziness, the dependence on breakfast, my strange apathy on certain days. Dependent on what, Alara? I asked. What were you giving me? She finally confessed. A compound that regulates mood and blood pressure, but that creates a habit. If you stop suddenly, you can become unstable. Reuben said it was safe, but then he started demanding money, blackmailing me, saying that if I didn't obey, he'd tell you. My son took a deep breath. So, what we found in the mug was residue of the compound, she admitted, defeated. I didn't manage to dissolve it well this time, and you discovered it. I collapsed onto the sofa. My legs had stopped supporting me. Everything I thought was secure had turned into a mirage. Alara, I said, barely audible. For how long? She sank to the floor. 1.5 years, she whispered. My son covered his face with his hands. I felt my heart lurch. And Reuben knows I discovered it? I asked. Alara nodded. Yes, and if he's out there, she pointed to the window, it means he's not here to talk. My son took a step toward the door, but I stopped him. No, son, I said. I'm facing him this time. Reuben remained inside the car, motionless, staring toward our house as if waiting for a signal. He didn't get out. He didn't honk. He didn't make a single gesture. He was just there, watching us like a patient predator who knows the movements of his prey before it even realizes it's in danger. I stood still, looking through the window, trying to sort out the thoughts that slammed into my mind like a gale. Alara's betrayal, Reuben's presence, the substance in the mug, the medical records I never saw. Everything mingled with the bitter realization that I had been manipulated for over 1 year. And yet, what hurt most wasn't the deception itself, but the motive behind it. Alara claimed to have done it out of love, but that love had been twisted, contaminated, dominated by fear, and by the threats of my own brother. My son broke the silence. Dad, we have to call the police. No, I replied, without looking at him. What do you mean, no? He insisted. Reuben is dangerous. Mom said so. You know that. I took a deep breath. I knew Reuben better than anyone. The police wouldn't scare him. He had connections. People who owed him favors. People who preferred to look the other way. If we report him now, I said, we'll just put him on alert. And a cornered man acts without thinking. We can't risk it. My son clenched his fists. Then what do we do? I kept looking at the car. First, we need proof. Everything Alara said has to be documented somewhere. Records, messages, something that proves Reuben was manipulating her. Alara, still on the floor, slowly raised her head. There is something, she whispered. Something I kept, just in case, but I never wanted to use it. I turned toward her. What is it? A notebook, she replied. Reuben kept notes, dates, instructions. He would leave it here when he visited, and one time he forgot it. I hid it without him noticing. But it's concealed. My son leaned toward her. Where, Mom? She hesitated for a few seconds. In your room, Marcus. In the top closet, inside an old toolbox you never use. I looked at her fixedly. Alara didn't seem to be lying. Her voice was so weak and defeated that for the first time in hours, I had the impression she was telling the complete truth. I'm going for it, I said. As I climbed the stairs, my legs trembled a little, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to find. I opened my closet, moved old shoeboxes, photos, clothes I hadn't worn in years, and finally reached the toolbox. It was heavy, rusty on the outside, but when I opened it, I saw it. A black notebook, no labels, no marks, cold to the touch. I took it carefully, as if it were a dangerous object. And as I opened it, I knew my life would never be the same. On the first page was a list of dates. Dates that matched days when Alara had told me I looked pale, tired, or off. Next to each date was a word, dose, and other instructions. Control, adjust. My breathing sped up. I turned the pages. There were notes about my health, comments on my behavior, even a section where Reuben described my character as manageable if rhythm is maintained. Manageable. That word burned inside me. And then, on a folded page, I found something even worse. A list of money amounts, huge amounts, with Alara's name written next to them on several occasions. It was blackmail, extortion, manipulation. But there was one last page. One that chilled me to the bone. If Marcus finds out, proceed with Plan C. And below that, Alara knows what to do. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I leaned against the wall, breathing with difficulty. Alara had reached a point where she feared Reuben so much. How far would she have been willing to go? What the hell did Plan C mean? I closed the notebook and returned to the living room. My son was standing. Alara was still on the floor. Both looked at me. "Did you find it?" my son asked. I nodded, setting the notebook on the table. Alara looked away, ashamed. "That notebook," she whispered. "I found it by accident. I hid it because I was afraid. Afraid of Reuben, afraid of what you would think of me, afraid of what might happen if I refused." My son opened the first page. "My God," he exclaimed. "This is enough to put him away." "Yes," I said, "but not yet. We still need to know what Plan C means." Alara raised her hands to her face. "Marcus, please don't read that." "I read it," I replied, with cold calm. "And now, I need you to explain it." It took her several seconds to speak. "Reuben said that if you found out, I had to convince you that you were sick, very sick. So you wouldn't trust your own memories, that you would feel dependent, vulnerable, manipulable." My son frowned. "What? That's monstrous," Alara cried. "I didn't want to do it, Marcus, I swear. But he threatened me. He told me that if I didn't follow his instructions, he would destroy our family, that he would leave you with nothing." I took a deep breath, trying to process it. It was too much. Too much for one heart. Too much for one morning. And then, just as I was about to respond, I remembered I had something important to do for my listeners now that the story was reaching a critical point. Before we move on, drop a comment below and tell me what you think of this story so far and what you would do in my shoes. Don't click away, because what comes next is going to give you chills. My son slammed the notebook shut. "Dad, what are we going to do?" I looked at the window. Reuben was still there, waiting, as if he knew we had already discovered everything. "We're going to end it," I said. "Today." My son swallowed. "How?" I took the notebook with a steady hand. "By showing him we're not afraid of him anymore." And as I said that, we heard the front door begin to shake. Someone was trying to get in. Reuben. The first knock against the door wasn't hard, but it was firm. A knock that wasn't meant to break it down, but to warn us that the person outside didn't need to, that he had time, that he had power, that he had control. I felt my son tense up next to me, his body instinctively preparing to protect something or someone. Alara, however, backed up several steps and leaned against the wall, gasping for air. The second knock came with more force. My son looked at me. "Dad, are you sure we shouldn't call the police?" I shook my head slowly. "If the police come in now, Reuben will use it against us. He has contacts. He'll make us look like the unstable ones." "Or worse," Alara sobbed. "Reuben isn't here to talk. He doesn't do that when he feels challenged." I looked at her. "Then it's best if he doesn't sense any fear in us." The third knock wasn't against the door, but against the window. A soft, deliberate tap, as if he wanted us to know exactly where he was. My son approached the curtain, opened it barely an inch, and froze. "Dad," he whispered. He's smiling. My stomach clenched. I knew that smile. It was the same one I'd seen when we were kids, and he wanted to scare me. The same one he showed when he ruined one of his supposed friends. The same one he wore at our father's funeral when he told me, "In the end, the ones who are willing to get their hands dirty always win." The sound of the doorknob began to rattle. Alara let out a muffled scream. I took a deep breath and took a step forward. "I'm going to talk to him." "What?" my son exclaimed. "Dad, he's dangerous." "Son," I said firmly, "Reuben doesn't want to kill me. Not yet. He wants control. He wants power. He wants to see if I'm still his little brother, who he can manipulate. And today, I'm going to prove to him that I'm not." My son clenched his fists. "I'm coming with you." Alara straightened up, crying, "Don't go out there. Please don't give him what he wants." But I had already decided. Sometimes the only way to defeat a fear is to open the door to it. When I turned the doorknob, my heart pounded with a mix of fury and lucidity I hadn't felt in years. I opened the door slowly, and there he was, Reuben, older, thinner, but with the same predatory look as always. His eyes swept over my face, as if reading an old book. Then he looked over my shoulder and smiled. That crooked smile I had always hated. "Brother," he said, spreading his arms as if coming in for a hug. "Long time? No see." I didn't respond to the gesture. His hug wasn't a hug. It was a noose. "You came too far, Reuben," I said, my voice hard. He tilted his head, feigning offense. "Too far? I came to see you. I came because Alara called me, worried, said you were agitated. Just what I had imagined you would use." My son stepped forward. "Stop acting, Reuben. We know what you did." Reuben looked at him with a mix of scorn and pity. Marcus's bright little boy. Always so righteous, so moral, so naive." I clenched my fist. "We have the notebook, Reuben." His smile instantly vanished. That detail caught him by surprise. He involuntarily smoothed his hair. "What notebook?" "The one you forgot here," I replied. "The one Alara kept. The one with every piece of blackmail, every dose, every threat recorded." Reuben's face hardened. "She didn't have the right." "You didn't have the right?" I interrupted. "You broke into my home, into my health, into my marriage. You manipulated Alara. You used my illness to gain power over us." Reuben clicked his tongue. "Oh, Marcus, always so dramatic. I offered you help. If Alara misunderstood the instructions—" "They weren't instructions," I snapped. "It was control. It was abuse. And you know it." The atmosphere became so tense that the air seemed to thicken. Then Reuben took a step closer. "Marcus," he said in a low voice, "you don't understand who you're messing with. I'm not the enemy. I'm the only person who can keep you alive." My son moved to interpose himself between us. "He doesn't need anything from you." Reuben looked at him with a coldness that chilled my blood. "Your father doesn't understand how delicate he is. But you could be smart. You could help me get him to cooperate." My son laughed, incredulous. "Help you? After everything you did?" Reuben continued speaking, ignoring his scoff. "Marcus, think about it. I can give you stability. I can prevent those cardiac episodes, that tiredness that worries you so much, all thanks to what Alara followed to the letter." Alara let out a whimper behind me. Reuben continued. But if you stop taking what you need, he paused dramatically, it can be dangerous. Very dangerous. My son exploded. You drugged him. You jerk. Reuben raised his hands. Strong words. I don't like the connotation. I felt something burning inside me. Something I had held back for decades. A mix of courage, sadness, and self-respect. And then I took a step toward him. Reuben, I said with deadly calm, I don't need anything that comes from you, and I won't continue to be your experiment. He arched an eyebrow. And what are you going to do? Hit me? Call the police? Convince someone that your own brother drugged you for over a year? Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds? My son held my arm. Dad, don't give him what he wants. Reuben smiled again. Exactly, Marcus. It's not in your best interest to cross me. But it was already too late. Because as he spoke, I noticed something behind him. A car. A sedan that stopped right behind his. And two people got out of it, wearing uniforms, with guns, with badges on their chests. My son's eyes widened in surprise. Reuben turned around slowly. The officers approached with firm steps. Reuben Hancock, one of them said. Reuben swallowed. What? What's going on? You're under investigation, the officer replied. We have a warrant to bring you in for questioning. Reuben looked at me with hatred, with rage, and with the certainty that he was no longer in control. I only responded, It wasn't me. And then the other officer spoke. It was an anonymous tip with solid evidence. My son leaned into my ear. Dad, was it you? I shook my head. No, but I know who it was, Reuben shouted. The officers handcuffed him. Ilara, standing in the doorway, covered her mouth, trembling. My son stood paralyzed. And I smiled for the first time in days, because I knew exactly who had placed the call, as someone who had seen everything from the inside, someone who knew Reuben better than we did, as someone who had been waiting years for the perfect moment to betray him. His name popped into my mind like a whisper. Darius. The officers put Reuben into the patrol car while he struggled, hurled insults, and screamed my name with a fury so animalistic that for a second I feared he might break the handcuffs. But then the door slammed shut, and his voice was isolated behind the reinforced glass. The silence that followed was thick, electric, filled with tension, accumulated over years. Ilara fell to her knees and began to cry, as I had never seen her cry before. It wasn't guilt, fear, or shame. It was release. It was a knot of anguish untied after carrying it alone for too long. My son stood motionless, processing everything, while I watched the car slowly drive away until it became an invisible speck at the end of the street. But I knew this didn't end with Reuben in handcuffs. I knew that behind this arrest was someone else pulling the strings, someone who wasn't acting out of kindness, but out of vengeance. We went inside the house. I locked the door. The air smelled of dust, tension, and truth. A truth that for the first time was fully exposed on the table, inside a black notebook full of secrets. My son walked over to me. Dad, you said you knew who reported Reuben. Who is Darius? Ilara slowly lifted her face, pale as a sheet. Darius, she whispered, was Reuben's apprentice, his assistant, his right-hand man for a long time. I nodded. Yes. Darius was his shadow, his ally, his accomplice. But he was also his victim. Reuben always had a special talent for manipulating people who had admired him. My son frowned. But why would he help us now? I pointed to the notebook. Because he wrote half of this. Darius knew everything. He kept the notes for Reuben. And when Reuben started to destroy his life too, Darius understood something important. The only way to survive Reuben is to sink him before he sinks you. Ilara breathed tremulously. Darius came to see me a few months ago, she confessed. He told me he couldn't keep helping Reuben, that he had found out what he was really putting in Marcus's coffee. He said he wanted to fix everything, but he needed time. And what did he ask in return? I asked, my heart racing. Ilara wiped her tears. That I help him gather evidence, if the time came. My son clenched his fists. And why didn't you tell us, Mom? Why didn't you speak up sooner? She looked at him with an expression that broke my soul. Because I was afraid of losing both of you. And because Reuben told me that if I said a word, he would harm Darius too. And I couldn't bear any more destruction. I didn't know what to answer. Ilara had been an accomplice, yes. She had lied, yes. But she had also been a victim of a man who knew very well how to slowly destroy a life. I sat down at the table, opened the notebook again, and flipped back to the beginning. It was all there, date by date, dose by dose, instructions that seemed lifted from a clinical manual. And then, on the third page, I saw something I had missed before. A clumsy drawing of a mug with a note next to it. Always use the same one to create habit. I pointed it out to my son. Look at this. This is where it all started. Reuben knew that if I got used to a single mug, it would be easier not to notice the changes in the drink's taste, texture, or color. And Ilara executed every step, thinking she was helping me. Ilara sobbed again. Forgive me, Marcus. I didn't know I was hurting you. You didn't do it, I responded softly. He did. You were just a piece in his game. But something still didn't add up. Something deeper. Something related to the phrase Ilara had repeated for years. It's better this way. Ilara, I said, looking at her, I want you to tell me the truth. When exactly did this mug ritual start? She lowered her gaze. A few months after your medical exam. Reuben came over one day and told me you were at risk, that you needed constant support, that it was best to do it without you knowing, because you would refuse treatment. And you believed him? My son asked, incredulous. She closed her eyes. I saw your father tired, fatigued, sad sometimes. I didn't know what to do. And Reuben had a way of talking. So convincing, so sure. I thought it was the right thing. But it wasn't just that. I knew Ilara wouldn't do something so extreme just out of fear or desperation. Ilara, I said, my voice heavy. What else did Reuben tell you? She looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. He told me that your father, that you could lose your memory if we didn't follow the treatment, that you could forget important things, that you could forget. Her voice broke off. Me. My son put a hand on her head, as if the weight of that sentence had fallen on him too. My heart clenched. Ilara hadn't acted out of malice. She had acted out of terror. Terror of losing me. Terror fueled by an expert manipulator. Ilara, I whispered, I would never have forgotten you. You didn't need any of this to hold on to me. She fell to her knees again. I just wanted to keep you with me, she cried, and I ended up hurting you. My son knelt beside her. Mom, this doesn't excuse you, he said firmly, but it does explain why you fell for it. He used you, he broke you, he made you believe his plan was the only way out. She kept nodding, but I was still looking at the notebook. There was something else, a sentence written in different handwriting. It wasn't Reuben's clumsy script. It was finer, more even. Darius. The sentence read, If you find this, don't trust Reuben. He doesn't want to cure him. He wants to control him. And if he gives him the final dose, Marcus won't ever be the same. My breathing hitched. Final dose. What did that mean? I showed the page to Alara. She was in shock. I never saw that note, she said. Darius must have written it later. My son jumped up. Dad, this wasn't just manipulation. This could have been deadly. I looked toward the window. Reuben was gone. But the battle was just beginning, because now we knew. Darius knew more than he let on. Reuben had a final plan. Alara was never alone, though she was never safe either. I stood up with difficulty. We have to find Darius, I said. He's the key to everything. My son nodded. Alara remained still. For the first time in years, the routine of my mug had lost its power, and I had regained mine. The house was steeped in a strange silence, a silence that wasn't calm, but preparation, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next move. Alara was still on the floor, her trembling hands resting on her legs, while my son paced the living room like a caged animal. I held the black notebook in my hands, feeling its weight as if it were a bomb about to explode. We have to find Darius, I repeated, more firmly this time. My son stopped. But how? We don't know where he lives, or where he might have gone. Alara slowly raised her head. I might be able to help, she said, her voice weak. I moved closer to her. Alara, this is important. What do you know? She swallowed nervously. Reuben had a place where he would meet with Darius when he didn't want anyone to see them. A secluded spot out of the city. I went there once, when Reuben forced me to take him a payment. My son frowned. What place? Alara closed her eyes as if recalling the sight was painful. An old, rundown cottage near the river. About a 15-mile drive from here. Reuben said it was neutral, that no one would bother them there. I nodded slowly. That was the first solid lead we had. Get ready, I told my son. We're going. His eyes widened. Now? Now, I replied firmly. Before Reuben gets out of the precinct, before Darius changes his mind, before someone else moves the pieces for us. Alara rose, staggering. Marcus, be careful. That place isn't safe. Nothing is safe anymore, Alara, I replied. But we have to try. My son grabbed the car keys. I tucked the notebook into the inner pocket of my jacket. As I opened the door, Alara ran up and gripped my arm tightly. Don't go without telling me something first, she said, tears in her eyes. I looked at her fixedly. Tell me. She took a deep breath. Her voice trembled. Darius isn't who you think. He wasn't always against Reuben. There was a time when he believed in that plan, too. My heart jumped. What plan? Alara looked away. The plan to control you? My son gritted his teeth. What? Darius agreed to it too? Alara nodded painfully. Reuben made him believe you were an obstacle, that your life was at risk, and that without the treatment, you could hurt your family unintentionally. Darius was inexperienced, impressionable. He believed they were saving you. I felt a mixture of anger and disappointment course through me like lightning. And when did he change? Alara lowered her gaze. When he saw the effects. When he realized Reuben didn't want to help you, but to control you. And when Reuben started demanding things from Darius that even he wasn't willing to do. My son took a deep breath. So, Darius is afraid, just like you. Yes, Alara whispered. And that's why he reported Reuben. But he's also dangerous. I nodded slowly. I know. And even so, he's our only option. We left the house. The cold wind hit our clothes like a premonition. My son drove while I watched the road, with a mix of nostalgia and rage. At 68, I never imagined I'd be involved in something like this. Conspiracies, manipulation, blackmail, and a brother who wanted to reduce me to a puppet. But life has strange ways of reminding you that you're still alive. After 20 minutes on the road, the city began to disappear behind us. The landscape became rougher, with crooked trees that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The river appeared on the right, dark and deep, snaking through the undergrowth. "Is this it?" my son asked. "Further ahead," I replied, vaguely recognizing the place from Alara's descriptions. After a few more minutes, I saw it. The old, gray, wooden cottage, with small windows, and a door that looked like it had been forced open more than once. The air around it was heavy, as if nature itself warned that this place had witnessed dark deeds. We parked a safe distance away. "Is anyone inside?" my son asked. I squinted. There were no lights, no movement, but there was an old car parked next to it. A car I knew. Darius's car. "He's here," I said in a low voice. My son swallowed. "We go in?" I nodded. We approached slowly, stepping on dry leaves that crunched beneath our feet like ancient bones. Every step made my heart beat faster. We reached the door. It was ajar. My son looked at me. "I'll go first." "No," I replied firmly. "I go first." I pushed the door open gently. The interior was dark, but not entirely. A kerosene lamp flickered on a table. Shadows danced on the walls like figures trying to escape. And then I heard it. A sob. A human sob. "Darius," I called out. "It's Marcus." The sobbing stopped. My son turned on his phone flashlight and pointed it toward a corner. Darius was there, sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, his face etched with fear, guilt, and deep exhaustion. "Marcus," he murmured. "I knew you'd come." I knelt in front of him. "Reuben was arrested," I said. "Thanks to you." Darius looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "I didn't do it for you," he whispered. "I did it because he was going to destroy me, but also because I knew he was about to give you the last dose." My heart skipped a beat. "The last dose?" Darius nodded. "Yes. Reuben said that if your body got used to it enough, the last dose would have left you—" He swallowed. "Irreversible. Not dead, but different. Easy to manage, just like he wanted." My son gritted his teeth. "And he already had that dose?" Darius nodded slowly. "Yes. And it's—" He pointed to his jacket pocket. "Here." My breath stopped. "Darius," I said slowly. "Why did you keep it?" He looked at me with a mix of shame and regret. "Because I didn't know if Reuben would force me to use it." The silence that followed was brutal. There was no going back. Reuben had wanted to destroy me. Darius had been part of it. Alara had been an instrument. And now they were all pleading for redemption. My son turned to me. "Dad, what do we do now?" I looked at Darius. I looked at the vial in his pocket. I looked at my hands. And I replied, "Now, we bring justice." Darius remained sitting on the floor, trembling, his eyes fixed on the vial in his pocket. A small, transparent bottle, harmless looking, but with the potential to change my life forever. My son watched him with a mix of pity and contained anger, while I tried to grasp the magnitude of what that object represented. The final dose, the last step of Reuben's plan, the masterstroke that would have left everything in his favor. "Give it to me," I told Darius. He looked up, surprised. "What? What are you going to do with it?" "What Reuben never imagined I would do," I replied coldly. My son intervened. "Dad, wait. We don't know what's in it. We don't know how to handle it." I looked at him. "Son, for an entire year, I ingested it unknowingly. Now, I at least have the chance to decide what to do with it. Darius lowered his head. You shouldn't touch it, Marcus. Reuben was obsessed with that vial. He said it was the key, that with it, no one could stop him. I stretched out my hand. Give it to me, Darius. With a trembling sigh, he took out the bottle and handed it to me. It was heavier than I expected. I held it between my fingers while a rush of memories flooded me. The mornings with the mug, the inexplicable exhaustion, the occasional dizziness, the arguments with Alara I never understood, the feeling of losing parts of myself without knowing why. It was all here, inside one vial. Did Reuben tell you exactly what it contained? I asked. Darius shook his head. He just called it the final adjustment. He said it would leave you docile, compliant, that you could live without problems, but never question him, never disobey him, never stand up to him. My son slammed his fist on the table. That man is sick. He's a monster. No, I corrected, in a low voice. He's a coward. And today, this ends. I tucked the vial into the inner pocket of my jacket. I had a plan, one that had been forming in my mind since Darius mentioned the existence of that dose. A plan Reuben would never have anticipated. A plan simple, yet devastating. Darius, I said, looking at him, I need to know one thing. Just one. Did Reuben act alone? Darius swallowed before answering. In the plan against you, yes. But he had contacts. People who got him substances. People who owed him favors. But the direct control over Ilara and you was exclusively his. That was enough. I stood up. We're leaving. My son's eyes widened. Where to? To the precinct. Darius immediately stood up. You can't go. If you provoke him, he'll say everything is false. That Ilara made it up. That you're manipulating the evidence. Reuben isn't foolish. He can spin the story so that you look like the culprits. I looked at him firmly. Darius, Reuben no longer has power over me. And the more he talks, the more he'll give himself away. My son frowned. Dad, are you sure about this? I nodded, surer than ever. Reuben has always used my silence as a weapon. Well, now I'm going to give him exactly what he doesn't expect. My voice. We left the cottage, leaving Darius behind. Although he was trembling, I knew he wanted this to end too. He knew that the only way to get rid of Reuben forever was for me to face him, now that I had proof for the first time in my life. We got in the car and drove toward the city. During the ride, my son looked at me several times. Dad, what's this plan you said you had? I took a few seconds to answer. Reuben always believed he could control me, that he could manage my body, my emotions, my thoughts. Well, I'm going to show him that he never, not even under his so-called treatment, fully broke me. How? I took the vial out of my pocket and looked at it carefully. I'll use this to destroy him. My son's mouth fell open, alarmed. What? Dad, you can't. That's dangerous, illegal, risky. Relax, I interrupted him. I'm not going to give it to anyone. Not Reuben, not Alara, not myself. But this is the most powerful evidence we have. If Reuben denies everything, this vial sinks him. My son breathed a sigh of relief. I thought, no, son, I calmed him. I'm not like him, but I can use what he created to bury him. When we arrived at the precinct, Reuben's car was still there. They had held him. Good sign. It meant the anonymous tip Darius had made was solid. We entered the building. An officer stopped us. How can I help you? We're here to make a statement, I replied, about Reuben Hancock. The officer raised an eyebrow. Are you Marcus Hancock? Yes. His eyes lit up. "Come in. The inspector wanted to speak with you." He led us to a small room with 2 chairs and a metal table. The inspector arrived minutes later. "Mr. Hancock," he said, shaking my hand, "your brother is here saying you suffer from episodes of mental confusion, that your wife does too, and that this is all a misunderstanding." I smiled calmly. "He said that? He insists no one should believe you." I took out the black notebook and placed it on the table. Then I took out the vial and set it next to the notebook. "The truth is this," I said. The inspector's eyes widened in surprise as he flipped through the notebook. This is serious. And it's real," I added. My son intervened. "There are messages, dates, threats. He manipulated my mother and poisoned my father for over a year." The inspector nodded while taking notes, but then he looked at me fixedly. "And you, Mr. Hancock, what do you want to happen to your brother?" My answer was simple. "I want the truth to destroy him, not my hands." At that moment, a shout boomed from the hallway. It was Reuben. "Marcus! Marcus! You don't know what you're doing. Without me, you're nothing." I slowly stood up and peered out the window of the interrogation room. Reuben was there, handcuffed, his face contorted with rage and fear. I looked him in the eye for the first time without fear. "You're wrong, Reuben," I said with absolute serenity. "Without you, I'm me again." The officers dragged him away while he continued to scream incoherently. My son put a hand on my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt free. And yet one chapter was still missing. One that would forever close the story of Ilara's mug and me. The pre-dawn hours greeted us outside the precinct like a cold sigh. The air smelled of cold earth, exhaustion, and a sunrise that hadn't quite dared to show itself. My son and I walked in silence toward the car. Neither of us knew how to process what had happened in the last few hours. Reuben was detained. Darius had confessed. Ilara had revealed her involvement. Forced, yes, but involvement nonetheless. And I had in my pocket the vial that symbolized an entire year of lies, manipulations, and decisions made by others in my name. I opened the car door with trembling hands. I didn't know if it was from relief, fear, or simply because at 68, I no longer had the strength I thought I did. But my son looked at me with a respect I had never seen in his eyes. It was as if I had suddenly recovered something I had lost without realizing it, my dignity. We sat down. He started the engine, but didn't drive off. He stayed, looking at the dark road in front of us. "Dad," he said in a low voice, "do you realize you could have died?" I didn't answer right away. I kept looking at my hands. Old hands, marked by years of work, by tools, by caresses, by losses. Hands that had never trembled as much as they did now. "Son," I finally replied, "I was already dying slowly, without knowing it. Not in my body, but in my mind, in my spirit. Reuben was destroying me from the inside, and I couldn't see it. He gripped the steering wheel. And Mom was part of that." I sighed. "Your mother was trapped. I don't justify her, but I can understand her fear. When you love someone, the terror of losing them can blind you." He looked at me with eyes full of sadness. "Are you going to forgive her?" That question pierced me like a spear. Forgiveness, a word as heavy as guilt, as sharp as truth. I didn't have a clear answer. Ilara had hurt me, yes, but she had also been manipulated by a man who always knew where to strike. I don't know, I replied truthfully. Forgiveness isn't something you give in a day, or even a week. I need time and space. The only thing I know is that I don't want to keep living a lie. My son nodded. Then let's go home. The drive back was silent. The city slept, oblivious to the emotional chaos hiding in the passenger seat. I watched the streetlights reflecting on the windshield and thought about how strange life is. You can walk for years believing you're on solid ground, and in a matter of hours, discover you were always standing on the edge of an abyss. When we arrived, Alara was sitting on the sofa with a blanket over her legs. Her eyes were red, but there were no tears, just a deep weariness, the kind that doesn't disappear with sleep. She stood up as soon as she saw us come in. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking. I raised a hand to stop her. "Don't talk yet," I requested. "I need to say something first." She swallowed, nodding in silence. "Alara," I began, "you and I have shared 40 years of life. They weren't perfect, but they were ours. You took care of me, our son, our home. You worked harder than anyone to keep this family standing, and yet you let Reuben into our life. You opened the door to a man you should never have allowed to come near. He manipulated you, yes, but you also allowed our trust to be broken." She closed her eyes. "I know, Marcus. I was wrong. I failed you. I put you at risk. I can't change that. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I replied softly. "But the damage is done and I have to heal." Alara covered her face with her hands. "Are you going to leave me?" My son looked at us with anguish. I didn't answer right away. I walked toward the kitchen. The faint light illuminated the table, where we had shared breakfast so many times. There was the white mug, harmless, silent, guarding secrets like a tomb. I picked it up. "This mug," I said from the kitchen, "became a cage, a daily prison, a routine that erased a little bit of me every morning." Alara approached slowly. "Marcus, please don't—" I interrupted her. "I don't want to keep living in a prison disguised as love. I don't want to take anything I don't choose. I don't want to depend on a lie to exist." I turned my back and opened the trash can. I dropped the mug. The sound of ceramic hitting the plastic was more liberating than any word. Alara wept silently. My son moved to her and held her. I leaned against the table. My chest felt full, but not with pain. It was something different. It was the feeling of regaining control, of being Marcus again, and not an experiment, not a patient who didn't know he was one, not a man manipulated from his own kitchen. I returned to the living room. Alara looked up, heartbroken. "What's going to happen to us, Marcus?" I sat across from her. "We're going to take some distance," I replied calmly. "I need to reclaim my life. I need time to heal. I need to trust myself again before I can trust you." She nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting that answer for hours. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll do whatever you need. Just don't hate me." "I don't hate you, Alara," I said sincerely, "but I also can't keep living as if nothing happened." She brought a hand to her chest, crying, "I love you, Marcus, and I loved you so little." "Little," I replied, "but true love can't be forced. It must breathe." My son intervened, his voice soft. "Dad, do you want me to stay with you tonight?" I looked at him. This young man who had grown up under my roof, who had seen my weaknesses without judging me, who had been my strength when I thought I had lost my own. "Yes, son," I replied. "Stay." Alara slowly stood up. "I'm going to the bedroom to pack a few things. I don't want to be in the way." I watched her walk toward the hallway, stooped, defeated, but also human. She wasn't a villain. She wasn't a monster. She was a woman who had loved badly, who had believed that controlling was protecting. who had fallen into the trap of a man worse than herself. Meanwhile, I looked at the broken mug in the trash can and realized something. The mug was empty. For the first time in a long time, I was also empty, but clean. Emptiness isn't always loss. Sometimes it's space to start over. My son put a hand on my shoulder. What you did today, Dad, not everyone could do. I smiled tiredly. What I did today was survive. No, he corrected. Today you were reborn. I walked to the window. The street was dark, but now it felt different. Less dangerous. More mine. A car passed slowly, and for a second, I thought it was Reuben returning to torment me. But no. He was behind bars, and even though justice had a long way to go, at least for now, he couldn't touch me. I looked at my reflection in the glass. Deep lines on my face, tired eyes, but behind them was something else. Firmness, determination, life. I took a breath and slowly exhaled. Tomorrow will be a new day, I said aloud. My son smiled. Yes, Dad, and we'll face it together. I stayed there a moment longer, watching the silent street, feeling the gravity of a chapter finally closing after too many dark days. It closed a story with a mug, with a substance, with a treacherous brother, with a frightened wife, with a strong son, and with myself, a man who took too long to see clearly. But I saw myself, and that was enough. I turned off the living room light, slowly climbed the stairs, closed my bedroom door, and for the first time in a very long time, I slept in peace. My name is Marcus. I am 68 years old, and as I speak to you now, sitting in my favorite armchair, I feel something I thought I would never feel again. Peace. A few days have passed since that night when I confronted Reuben, when Alara confessed her part, and when my own son reminded me of who I truly was. I won't lie to you. It still hurts. I still wonder how I didn't see what was happening right in front of my eyes. How did I let routine disguise the poison? How did I let someone else's fear become my prison? But today, sitting here, I understand something I didn't see before. Sometimes, life forces you to break so you can rebuild yourself with your own hands, without anyone else deciding for you which pieces to keep. The mug is gone. I threw it away myself, but I don't remember it with hatred. I remember it as a reminder, a warning, a symbol that I will never again allow anyone to have power over my will. Alara went to stay with her sister for a few days. She needs help, and so do I. But we are alive, and that is already a victory. My son is with me, and every morning I prepare my own breakfast, without fear, without doubt, only with the certainty that I am still here, standing, breathing, recovering. I'm really glad you're here, and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.